Aries, let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt that quiet tension inside your chest? Like someone close to you wasn't showing their full face anymore. Not loud, not obvious, just off. Because if you're here right now, this isn't random. Something you sensed but didn't want to confront is starting to surface. You've changed, Aries. Your energy shifted. And when that happens, the truth doesn't knock politely. It rises. Tonight isn't about blame. It's about clarity, about recognizing who no longer matches your fire. Stay with me. Listen closely. And if this hits a nerve, don't ignore it. Drop a comment, or just trust what your body already knows. Because what's about to unfold is only the beginning of a much bigger story. You didn't wake up one day and decide to become different. That's not how real change works. It started quietly, a subtle misalignment, like standing in a room you've been in 100 times before, but suddenly the air feels heavier, familiar faces feel distant, and your body notices it before your mind ever does. You tried to ignore it at first. You told yourself you were just tired, overthinking, maybe too sensitive, but deep down, you knew better. Because when someone close to you is no longer moving at your pace, your energy doesn't argue, it withdraws. And that's what's been happening, Aries. Not rejection, not coldness. Just a quiet pulling back of your spirit, as if your soul whispered, "This no longer feels safe to carry." You've grown, not loudly, not dramatically, but in the way that only real maturity shows itself, through restraint, through discernment, through the moment you stop explaining yourself to people who never really listened anyway. There were experiences that changed you, some of them heavy, some of them unfair, some of them karmic in ways that don't need labels to be understood. They shaped your spine, your voice, your patience, and now you're standing in a place where you can no longer pretend that everyone around you is walking the same direction. That's when truth begins to surface, not as an accusation, not as a confrontation, but as a feeling that won't leave. It shows up in the pauses, in the hesitation before you share good news, in the way your chest tightens when a certain name crosses your mind, in the realization that you've been shrinking parts of yourself just to keep the peace. Aries, that wasn't weakness. That was love. That was loyalty. That was you giving people more grace than they ever earned. But here's the thing about fire. When it evolves, it stops burning everything indiscriminately. It becomes intentional, focused, protective of its own warmth. And that's where you are now. You're no longer looking for validation. You're looking for resonance. You're no longer chasing connection. You're listening for truth. And that's why certain dynamics feel louder lately. Why small interactions suddenly carry weight. Why the masks around you are starting to feel thinner. This isn't about judgment, it's about clarity. Because when you step into a higher version of yourself, anything built on imbalance starts to shake, not to punish you, but to reveal itself. I want you to breathe here for a moment. Really breathe. Notice what your body relaxes around and what it tightens against. That's your compass now. You don't need to rush. You don't need to confront anything yet. You just need to stay present with what's unfolding. Because once the shift begins, the story doesn't stop at awareness. It moves deeper, into the spaces where interference becomes impossible to ignore, where growth exposes friction, and where the next layer of truth quietly waits for you to be ready. And you are closer than you think. At some point, you started to notice it. Not because anyone said anything, but because the room felt different when you walked in. The laughter didn't land the same, the silences felt sharper, and certain people who once felt familiar now seemed restless around you. That's what happens when you grow, Aries. Not everyone celebrates it. Some people feel it as disruption. Your presence carries a new weight now, a steadiness, a clarity that doesn't ask for permission. And for those who built comfort around your old version, that shift can feel threatening. They might not know why they're irritated, why their tone changes, why small things suddenly bother them. But their nervous system knows something has changed. You're no longer playing small to keep the atmosphere calm. You're no longer softening your truth to make others comfortable. And even when you say nothing at all, your energy speaks for you. This is where interference begins, not as chaos, but as tension, as subtle resistance, as emotional static that wasn't there before. You may notice people reacting more intensely to you, reading meaning into your silence, projecting intentions you never had, responding defensively to boundaries you didn't even announce. And here's the part most people never talk about. Growth doesn't just attract alignment, it exposes imbalance. Some people didn't want you to rise. They wanted you predictable, accessible, easier to read, easier to influence. And when you stopped being that, their discomfort surfaced. This doesn't make them villains, but it does make one thing clear. Not everyone close to you is meant to go where you're headed. That realization can sting, especially for someone like you, Aries, who leads with loyalty, who protects the circle, who believes in standing shoulder to shoulder. You didn't change to leave anyone behind. You changed because your soul asked you to. And when your inner world upgrades, your outer world must respond. Some relationships stretch, some strain, some reveal fractures that were always there, just hidden under familiarity. You might catch yourself questioning, am I imagining this? Am I being too much, too distant, too intense? No. You're just no longer available for dynamics that require you to dim. There's a quiet strength forming in you now, the kind that doesn't argue, doesn't prove, doesn't chase understanding, it simply observes. And as you observe, patterns emerge, reactions repeat, certain faces feel heavier to hold eye contact with, certain conversations drain you faster than they used to. That's information, not judgment, not a call to act yet, just awareness. Because the truth is, Aries, interference is often the first signal that something deeper is at play. A misalignment that's been tolerated for too long, a connection that thrived on an older version of you, a dynamic that depended on you staying exactly where you were. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You don't need to confront anything right now. You don't need to label anyone. You just need to stay present with what's being revealed. Because what begins as interference often leads to something more precise, more personal, more undeniable. And very soon, you won't just feel the tension. You'll understand where it's coming from. It didn't happen all at once, and that's why it took you so long to name it. If it had been loud, if it had been obvious, if it had come with a clear betrayal or a single unforgettable moment, you would have walked away without hesitation. But this wasn't that. This arrived quietly, disguised as concern, as familiarity, as someone who knew exactly how to speak to your softer side. At first, it felt harmless, a promise here, a reassurance there, words that sounded supportive, even loving, even protective. But over time, something began to shift inside you. You started replaying conversations in your head, not because you were dramatic, but because something didn't sit right. You caught yourself wondering, did I misunderstand that? Did I say too much? Am I being unreasonable? That moment, Aries, that moment when you began questioning your own perception, was the first real crack. Because you don't doubt yourself easily. You're intuitive, direct, grounded in your instincts. So when your inner voice started going quiet, when your confidence softened around one specific person, that wasn't coincidence. It was erosion, not destruction. Erosion. Little by little, your fire was redirected, your certainty diluted, your boundaries blurred without anyone ever asking for permission. This person didn't need to raise their voice. They didn't need to attack you openly. They simply needed to stay close enough to influence how you saw yourself. That's what made it dangerous. Because betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from people who know exactly where you're vulnerable because you trusted them with that knowledge. You gave them access, not to harm you, but to understand you. And they used that access to steady themselves while slowly destabilizing you. You may have felt controlled without ever being told what to do, restricted without a single rule spoken out loud. That's how subtle manipulation works. It convinces you that the confusion is yours. But listen to me, here. Your body knew, long before your mind was ready to admit it. That tightness in your chest, that heaviness after certain conversations, that instinct to pull back, even when you couldn't explain why. Those were not flaws, those were signals. This person was close enough to influence your trust, close enough to affect your sense of stability. And that proximity, that emotional closeness, is what made the betrayal feel so disorienting. Because part of you didn't want to believe it, didn't want to label it, didn't want to lose what you thought the connection was. So, you stayed longer than you should have. You gave more chances than were deserved. You waited for clarity that was never going to come from them. Until one day something shifted. Not explosively, not dramatically. Just a moment of undeniable clarity. A look, a sentence, an action that couldn't be explained away. And suddenly the pattern made sense. You didn't imagine it. You didn't exaggerate it. You weren't too sensitive. You were simply seeing the truth without filters. And once that happens, Aries, the story doesn't stop at awareness, because recognition is only the beginning. What follows is far more revealing and far more liberating than you expect. Aries, you've always been fire, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that quietly warms a room without ever asking for credit. You give energy without counting, you protect without keeping score, and when you care fully. That's what made this so hard to see, because someone close to you learned how to stand near your flame long enough to feel alive again, without ever learning how to carry their own light. At first, it felt mutual, like support, like shared strength, like you were building something together. But over time, the balance shifted. You noticed how your wins were acknowledged just briefly before being redirected or minimized or quietly compared to something else. You noticed how your confidence was celebrated on good days, but questioned on days when you needed reassurance. You noticed how your excitement was slowly met with restraint, as if your brightness needed to be managed. That's how it happens, Aries. Not with cruelty, but with subtle correction. This person didn't try to extinguish you. They needed your fire too much for that. Instead, they learned how to lean on it, how to draw warmth from your certainty, how to stabilize themselves by slowly destabilizing you. You started feeling tired in ways rest couldn't fix, drained even after conversations that looked normal on the surface. You gave more explanations, more patience, more benefit of the doubt. And somehow, it was never enough. That feeling of never quite reaching the standard, of always needing to prove your intentions, of being made smaller without anyone saying the words, that's not humility. That's erosion of self. And the hardest part is this: they may not even realize they're doing it. People who feed on fire rarely know how dependent they've become. They confuse your strength for something endless, something owed, something they can draw from without ever asking how it affects you. But your soul knows. It knows when giving becomes depletion. It knows when loyalty turns into self-abandonment. It knows when love is being used as a resource instead of honored as a connection. That's why your body started pulling back, why your enthusiasm softened, why your spirit stopped offering itself so freely. Not because you changed into someone colder, but because you grew into someone wiser. Aries, you were never meant to shrink so someone else could feel taller. You were never meant to carry someone else's insecurities just to keep the peace. Your fire was meant to move, to lead, to illuminate paths forward, not to stay in one place burning quietly for someone who refuses to walk. And here's where the story deepens, because the moment you begin reclaiming your energy, the dynamic shifts. The person who depended on your flame starts to feel the cold. They notice your boundaries even when you don't announce them. They feel the distance even when you remain kind. And that's when things begin to surface, not yet as confrontation, not yet as words, but as tension, as reactions that don't quite match the moment, as a subtle resistance to your independence. This is the threshold, Aries, the place where awareness turns into movement. You don't need to act yet. You don't need to explain anything. Just stay present. Because what comes next is not about what you gave. It's about what happens when you finally stop giving it away. There is a moment when clarity stops feeling abstract. It becomes personal, not dramatic, not mystical in the way movies portray it, just quiet, specific. You start noticing a detail repeating itself, not loud enough to demand attention, but consistent enough that your body reacts before your mind does. A letter, a sound, a name that carries a certain weight when you hear it spoken. And no, Aries, this is not about obsession. It is not about looking for signs everywhere. It is about recognition. Patterns do not shout. They echo. You may have brushed it off at first, told yourself it was coincidence, that you were reading too much into things, that names are just names. But something in you paused every time that letter surfaced. Every time that energy brushed against your field, your chest tightened slightly, your breath shifted, your attention sharpened. That is not imagination. That is memory stored in the body. Because patterns live in sensation before they ever live in thought. This letter is not the cause. It is the doorway. It may appear as a first name, a last name, a nickname spoken casually in conversation, or even as someone who carries the same emotional signature regardless of what they are called. What matters is not the letter itself. It is the frequency attached to it, the way your nervous system responds, the way your energy either pulls back or braces itself. You do not need confirmation from anyone else. You do not need proof. You do not need to explain this to yourself or to anyone listening. Your intuition already cataloged the data, quietly, patiently. Aries, you have always been quick to act, but this time, your awareness arrived first. And that is growth, because instead of reacting, you are observing. Instead of confronting, you are noticing. Instead of denying what feels uncomfortable, you are allowing it to speak. There is power in that pause. The letter is simply a marker, a thread connecting moments that once felt unrelated, conversations that left you drained, interactions that seemed harmless but carried an undertone you could never quite name. Now you can name it, not aloud, just within yourself. And with that recognition, something inside you settles, not because the situation is resolved, but because confusion has begun to lift. You are no longer asking what is wrong, you are asking what is true. That shift matters. Because when you recognize a pattern, you stop personalizing it. You stop blaming yourself for dynamics that were never yours to fix. You stop negotiating with your own instincts. This is not about labeling someone as good or bad. It is about understanding what energy no longer belongs in your space. And that understanding brings relief, even before any action is taken. For now, all you are being asked to do is to trust what your body already knows, to stay present with what has been revealed, to let awareness do its quiet work. Because recognition is never the end of the story. It is the moment the story begins to move. And very soon, what you have noticed internally will start to shift externally, not through force, not through confrontation, but through a change in how much access you allow to your fire, your attention, and your life. And that is where the next layer waits. There comes a point when silence stops protecting you. It starts costing you. You have felt it building, that pressure behind your ribs, that awareness that something unfinished is standing between you and your peace. A conversation is approaching, not because you chased it, but because truth has a way of stepping forward once you stop stepping back. This will not be gentle, and it does not need to be. What makes it different this time is not the words that will be spoken. It is the way you will be standing inside yourself when they leave your mouth. You are not arriving angry, you are arriving clear. There is a calm forming in you now, not the quiet of avoidance, but the quiet of certainty. You know what you saw, you know what you felt, and you are no longer asking to be understood. That is power. Aries, you used to explode when something crossed a line. Your fire would rise fast and burn hot, because that was the only way you knew how to protect yourself. But this time, your fire is steady, directed, intentional. You will speak without shaking. You will name what is real without raising your voice. And that will be more unsettling than any outburst ever could be, because clarity leaves no room for manipulation. The other person may react, they may deflect, they may minimize, they may attempt to pull you back into confusion. But you will notice something immediately. None of it sticks anymore. The hooks that once caught your emotions no longer find purchase. The guilt that once slowed your words no longer reaches your chest. You are not here to convince. You are here to conclude. And in that moment, something shifts. Not outside of you, inside. You feel it as a settling, as a return of weight to your spine, as if a part of your energy that had been negotiating finally comes home. This is not confrontation as destruction. This is confrontation as release. Because when you speak the truth calmly, you reclaim authority over your own experience. You stop asking permission to feel what you feel. You stop second-guessing your perception. You stop carrying the emotional labor for two. And control quietly returns to where it belongs. To you. Not through dominance, not through winning, but through self-possession. Aries, this conversation does not need to end in agreement. It only needs to end in honesty. You are allowed to be done explaining. You are allowed to draw a line without drama. You are allowed to choose clarity over comfort. And when the words settle, when the air clears, when the exchange finally passes, you will notice how much lighter your body feels. Not relieved because someone apologized, but relieved because you honored yourself. That matters more than resolution. Because the real shift does not happen in the room. It happens afterward, in how you walk away, in how you breathe differently, in how you stop revisiting what was said. This is the moment your energy stops leaking, the moment your fire stops being available to be managed by others. You may not realize it yet, but this is the threshold, the place where your story turns inward, where strength becomes boundary, where release becomes direction. And as you step forward from this conversation, something else begins to take shape, something quieter, more sovereign, more final. And that is where the next layer is waiting. There is a quiet moment after truth is spoken when you realize something important. You are no longer fighting, not because you gave up, but because there is nothing left to prove. That is where release begins. Cutting a cord does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a doctor closing without a sound. No argument, no explanation. Just a gentle certainty that you are done carrying what never belonged to you. For a long time, you thought leaving meant being cruel, that choosing yourself meant betraying history, shared memories, time invested, versions of people who no longer exist. But listen to me here, Aries. Time alone does not justify suffering. Longevity does not equal alignment. You stayed because you cared, because you believed in loyalty, because you hoped things would eventually feel lighter. But your body told the truth long before your mind caught up. Every time you walked away feeling smaller, every time your chest tightened instead of relaxed, every time you needed hours to recover from a simple interaction. That was not love asking you to stay. That was habit asking you to endure. And you do not owe endurance to anything that drains your life force. Closing the door does not require anger. It requires honesty. Honesty with yourself about what you can no longer hold, about what your spirit refuses to normalize. You do not need to explain this choice to anyone. People who benefited from your silence will rarely understand your boundaries, and that is not your responsibility. Aries, you are not cutting cords to punish anyone. You are doing it to survive with your dignity intact, to protect the fire that still wants to create, to lead to love, to build something meaningful. There is a difference between compassion and self-abandonment. You crossed that line quietly for a long time. Now you are stepping back, not with bitterness, but with clarity. You are allowed to leave without closure. You are allowed to move forward without consensus. You are allowed to say no, even when your voice stays calm. That is not cruelty. That is self-respect. And something beautiful happens when you choose yourself this way. Your energy stops scattering. Your thoughts grow quieter. Your body softens. You begin to notice how much space opens up when you stop managing other people's emotions. You sleep deeper. You breathe fuller. You stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen. This is not emptiness. This is space. Space where your fire can finally move freely again. Space where your intuition can guide you forward without interference. Space where the next chapter has room to arrive. And as you settle into that space, you may feel a flicker of guilt rise. Let it pass. Guilt is often just grief for the version of you who stayed longer than they should have. Thank that version. Then release them. Because what waits ahead is not isolation. It is alignment. Not everyone leaves your life because something went wrong. Some leave because something finally went right within you. And as you step away from what drained you, you are quietly stepping toward what restores you. You may not see it clearly yet, but you will feel it. In the calm, in the steadiness, in the way your fire no longer needs to defend itself. And very soon that reclaimed energy will begin to move again, not backward, not in circles, forward with intention towards something that can finally meet you where you stand. There is a moment after release when everything feels strangely quiet, not empty, just still. That is when your fire begins to return, slowly at first, like warmth moving back into your hands after a long winter, like breath settling into your chest without effort. You may not even notice it right away. But one morning, you wake up clearer. Your thoughts line up instead of pulling you in different directions. Your body feels present again, not braced, not guarded, available. That is your energy coming home. When you let go of what drained you, what remains has room to expand. Your focus sharpens, not in a frantic way, but in a grounded, intentional way. You stop scattering your attention across emotional negotiations that never led anywhere. You stop revisiting conversations that already ended. You stop wondering how to be smaller so someone else can stay comfortable. And in that space, motivation returns. Not the restless kind, the clean kind. You feel drawn toward what actually matters to you. Your work, your ideas, your long-term direction. You begin to see paths that were always there but impossible to follow, while your energy was tied up elsewhere. This is where momentum builds. Not because you forced it, but because nothing is blocking it anymore. Aries, this is not loss. This is circulation restored. The fire that once kept others warm now fuels your own movement forward. You may notice opportunities aligning differently, decisions becoming easier, your instincts returning with confidence instead of doubt. Even financially, there is a shift, not through luck, but through clarity. When your energy is no longer leaking, your efforts begin to compound. Your time is invested instead of spent. Your focus has weight behind it. You know where you are going now, not perfectly, but enough to take the next step without hesitation. And that is power. The kind that does not announce itself. The kind that does not need witnesses. The kind that cannot be manipulated. Because manipulation only works when you are disconnected from yourself. You are not anymore. Aries, the truth did not break you. It freed you. It returned your agency, your authority, your inner alignment. You are no longer available for confusion disguised as connection. You are no longer open to dynamics that require you to shrink, justify, or explain your worth. From here on, your fire answers only to your integrity. That does not mean you become harder. It means you become cleaner, clearer boundaries, clearer intentions, clearer direction. And with that clarity, life responds differently. People meet you where you stand or fall away naturally. Projects either gain traction or dissolve quickly. Your nervous system learns what peace feels like again. This is the reward of choosing yourself. Not applause, not validation. Freedom. Freedom to move forward without looking back. Freedom to build without interference. Freedom to trust your instincts fully again. You are not the same Aries who entered this story, and that is the point. Your fire has not dimmed. It has matured, and from here, everything you create will come from a place that is no longer compromised. That is where your real life begins. Aries, if you're still here with me right now, it's not because you were curious. It's because something inside you recognized itself. This message didn't come to scare you. It came to return you to yourself. The truth didn't show up to take something away. It showed up to give you back your fire, your clarity, your direction. And maybe the most surprising part of all is that you didn't lose anything real. You simply stopped carrying what was never yours to begin with. So, take a breath here. Let it land. If any part of this spoke directly to your heart, leave a comment, not for me, for you. Sometimes naming the truth is the final release. And if you're ready to keep walking this path with us, subscribe to the channel. This space is built for Aries who are done shrinking and ready to move forward with awareness, strength, and integrity. Trust yourself, Aries. You always knew. This wasn't the end of the message. It was the doorway. The journey continues, and the next message is already on its way.